Garrison Price for Monday, February 24th, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the Historic Wall Center. And as always, this program, a presentation of Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting switches, conducting things. We got a big show planned for you after a busy weekend that was for the Vancouver Canucks. Did you have a busy weekend?
Yeah, crazy weekend. I woke up this morning, I was like, well, that weekend didn't count as a weekend. It was that kind of a weekend.
When weekends feel like work.
Yeah.
I went and saw your alma mater play basketball against my school, my local school.
High school alma mater, yeah.
Kitts Secondary in Handsworth at the Sea to Sky Championships on Saturday at Killarney. Good game. I got to say, the first 4 3-pointers of the game went down. I have refereed youth basketball, played high school basketball, covered university basketball. I can't remember many times where 4 straight 3-pointers went down. I was really impressed with those kids. The level of high school basketball now is kind of like the level of university basketball when we were in school.
All about the alma maters. I went and saw my UBC alma mater baseball team, and I witnessed a pinch hit first pitch grand slam.
Attaboy.
To win the game. Well, it wasn't a walk-off. From a freshman? From a freshman.
Attaboy, kid.
Guy had like 5 at-bats, I think.
Well, Canucks had 2 at-bats this weekend and lost them both. We're going to start with our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question, kind of a remnant from Friday in the Kevin Lankinen extension. When should the Canucks trade Thatcher Demko? Your options there by the deadline this summer, next season, or keep him if you'd like. What says you, Blake?
I think the answer is probably summer, but I understand all the answers. I gotta say this, it is so stupefying to look at the crease right now and try to come up with a proper solution for this team going forward. I mean, could you stomach like a 2-year extension signed by Thatcher Demko in the summer that is team friendly, like a 2-year deal, low cap it because Thatcher?
I'm not sure he could.
Well, it's just
he's got another year to sort of bet on himself, get back to being a Vezina caliber goaltender, and hit
bigger. Yeah. So if you take that, if that's the vibes they get in reality, that he's going to be unwilling to sign an extension this summer, and that he wants to bet on himself. Man, you've got a big decision to make here because $9 million is not $9.5 million is not a crazy goaltending battery in an elevated cap world. There's some goaltenders, of course, like Bobrovsky, that make more than that on their own.
Yep.
So it's not crazy to go into next season like that. The question is, well, I guess here's the thing: what do they actually think they're going to be doing next season?
Well, what do they actually think they're going to be doing the rest of this season and by the trade deadline?
Well, all that.
You got 5 games left before the trade deadline. You have some pretty big decisions looming here, whether that's Brock Besser, whether that's Elias Pettersson, whether that's Thatcher Demko. He's still on the right side of 30 until December of next year, going into the final year of his contract. I'm really indiscriminate on this. I'm agnostic. I don't really care, just so long as it's before the next injury. Get him healthy, get him playing a run of games, and then move him before the next injury creeps up. I can see the case for keeping him. I can see the case for keeping him into next season, if you will, particularly if you don't get the marketplace that is a reflection of his true value. And I do think because you bled some value in the JT Miller trades, and I include the Pittsburgh one as well, you have to make sure that you are going to exact market value or better in your next trades if you're putting guys on the market. That goes for Brock Besser at the deadline. particularly if you lose some games between now and then, and that goes for a Thatcher Demko trade. If somebody, and Stéphane Roger of Canucks Army has done a piece on this, he lists 6 different clubs that may very well be interested: Carolina, Columbus, Detroit, Edmonton, Philly, and San Jose. So you have the Hurricanes and Oilers there as teams that are looking for a goaltender to get them over the top. You've got the Blue Jackets and Detroit there as teams that are looking to get back to the playoffs for the first time in a while. And then you have also rans like Philadelphia and San Jose who are looking to secure the crease for next season and beyond. So if you're able to play those teams off each other and a market develops by the trade deadline, I think you have to look at that. Same goes for the summer. If you don't get what you're looking for Thatcher Demko, then there's nothing wrong with going back into next season with both of these guys and securing the crease, so to speak.
Let's do this. What's the percentage of chance that you give to a Demko trade and a Besser trade for the deadline?
I give a Besser trade a much bigger chance.
But
first of all,
as high as 50-50 or
well,
no?
First of all, and we got Darren Dreger coming up with some interesting injury updates for Vancouver Canucks players. So we know he's going to miss the next 3, right? This Southern California double dip and then Seattle on Saturday. So that brings you to a maximum of 2 games he could play. Really, 1 game he could play before the deadline. The Anaheim game.
Yeah.
Next week.
They play on deadline day, but of course.
Yes, but that's
after.
post-deadline. Yeah. So I got to put myself on E's and O's, actually. There's 4 games left before the deadline. So I would put the chances of a Thatcher Demko trade below 20% between now and the deadline.
And sorry, Besser's number was what?
Besser's number is closer to 50-50 for me.
Closer to 50-50, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I can understand. And look, that one might be tough to sell to the owner, so it might be less than 50%, because that one may very well be a giving up on this season trade if you're moving him for futures. We know how Aquilini feels about playoff revenue.
I still think I agree with you on Besser. I'll put single digits on Demko.
Okay. Yeah. The daily poll question, a presentation of Surrey Mitsubishi, and Surrey Mitsubishi wants to get EP40 back on top. Everyone at the dealership beyond rallying around the hometown hero. Every time he scores a point, you save $500 the next day on any new or used vehicle. If he gets 2 points, you can get into Surrey Mitsubishi, save $1,000. If he gets 5 points, yeah, $2,500 the next day. You got to mention Harrison Price. The offer is valid until the next game day. Time to cheer EP40 back to the top. Score more, save more, more value, more savings. Bring them any offer. Surrey Mitsubishi will beat it. Visit 13820 104th Avenue. Let's get to our top story. It's brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery, winless weekend, and more pouting from Petey, who shows fire on the bench and spits fire in the postgame. A 2-1 loss at the Utah Hockey Club on Sunday. Elias has the puck all alone, in front, late, fails to convert 1-on-1. That's where you need your $11.6 million player to be the difference in a low-scoring game where one shot, one opportunity can make the difference between 2 points and none. He's unable to do it. Dylan Guenther, he who would have been a Vancouver Canuck, right? If not for the OEL Connor Garland trade, he was selected with the pick that Vancouver sent to the then Arizona Coyotes. He scores the winner with 6 minutes to play. Elias now on 1 goal in his last 17 games and none in the last 11. And yet, I'm not going to sit here and crucify him for that game last night, or even really for the Vegas game where he gets on the score sheet. These weren't the worst of his efforts, but alas, the struggles continue.
I mean, they aren't the worst in that I don't think we're seeing him hindering the team from a defensive standpoint. But again, at 11.6, you want, I mean, we all point to the breakaway or the all-alone chance as a glorious opportunity, but it also stands out like an island in the Pacific. Like, there's just not many chances for Elias Pettersson these days. I believe our good friend Grady Sass said, if you include the Swedish games at the Four Nations, he's got 6 shots in 9 games. He's taken 6 shots, and he's way under a shot per game. So
we're going to get to his disappearing shooting here in a moment.
So I'm still piling on him for the performance. I won't say effort, but I'll say for the performance.
Yes.
It's just not there for Elias Pettersson. Now, I think we can all remember to etch this game into our memory. I was going to ask you, do you remember a reaction from him on the bench that comes close to what we saw last night in Utah? I don't.
No, well,
but let's put this one.
Fewer and far between, put it that way.
In other words, he's had very nondescript or poor performances or poor executions before on the ice, and we have noticed nothing of it. At least he showed a pulse when he went back to the bench, slamming the door, swearing at himself. I would almost rather see that. In a lot of cases, you don't like that because it's like if Brock Besser's doing that, you're like, what? What's going on there?
No,
but here, in this case, I'm almost,
Well, I think fans need that too. They need to see some fire. They need to see that he cares, particularly when he continues with the flippant and glib answers. Ian McIntyre sought out Rick Tocchet after the game last night, asked him about EP40. Here's the quote. Tocchet, quote, "We've talked about he has to move his feet and can't double clutch," meaning with the puck. Tocchet continues, "I think he's waiting for something. I don't know if it's a lack of confidence in his shot, but as soon as he has room, he's got to take it, and he's just got to blast it. I'd rather have him just rip a puck right now. He's not moving his feet. I thought today some shifts he was moving his feet, and it looked like we had some glimpses, but 6-on-5 there at the end, it's the same thing, waiting. If he just takes 3 or 4 strides." And then Tocchet ended by saying, "I don't know if it's a mental block right now all year, but he's got to move his feet." When McIntyre asked Patterson about confidence and whether that was a factor, he replied, quote, "It's more annoying dealing with the media." Yeah, I mean, when you're playing poorly on $11.6 million, it's going to be annoying dealing with the media.
Yeah.
Fans here care. Okay, our buddy Wyatt Arndt. Elias Pettersson disliking the media is all good. I barely like myself most days, but he has a letter, so he needs to deal with media shit better. It's part of the role, and particularly when Quinn Hughes is not in uniform, right? And then 2, being cheeky is fine, but you can't act openly hostile and withdrawn all season, then expect this to land. Yes, if that was an attempt at humor, we saw this with Roberto way back in the day, right? When with Roberto, it was kind of inauthentic, self-deprecating humor that people knew better until he flipped the persona. And with Elias, it is a glib, flippant, pouty, immature stuff, which, again, fix it. Show us you're mature. Show us you care. I suppose he did with the emotion. Take full responsibility, accountability. You've got a winger. JT Miller isn't here. Alas, no. So, look, the player has been told time and time again. He was told last year by his superiors with the Vancouver Canucks, head coach Rick Tocchet, GM Patrick Alvin, president of hockey operations Jim Rutherford. Pressure comes with that new contract. I sure hope Patterson and JP Barry, his agents, have let him know that as well, because right now he doesn't seem to be getting very good advice. You have the NHL's 2 super agents, and still this whining about the media continues. Pat, JP, that's your cue, man. Time to move in and get this guy a little bit better in front of the cameras and microphones. He's got all sorts of resources available to him with the Vancouver Canucks. Couple of countrymen who struggled for large parts of their NHL careers off the jump, dealt with all sorts of media criticism and questions, and emerged as the 2 legacy icons of this franchise who had great rapport with fans and media. Why? Well, because they knew how to play the game, and they let all the criticism improve them, as opposed to reverting into a shell, being distant, being unreachable to those in his mitts.
Well, also, we've just got plain facts at our disposal here that the media has now become 20% of what it was for the Sedin twins. It is they are now trotted out by request only. It is not an open locker room. And others have a far bigger load to bear than Elias Pettersson does in terms of media responsibilities, and they fare just fine in guys like Hughes and Myers in particular, who do the bulk of the speaking now, especially with JT Miller gone.
Well, I got to say, like, when Miller struggled or made a mistake, he was usually there.
He was usually there.
Accountable.
Yeah.
Ready to talk about it. And by the way, if you haven't noticed, JT has 8 points in 7 games as a Ranger. He's got 4 2-point games. He had been pointless in 6 through the Four Nations, but he came back with a banner weekend, 2 assists on Saturday, 2 goals on Sunday as the Rangers split their games. Let me ask you this. Because, look, Elias has said in the past he wants more pressure. He puts pressure on himself. I mean, he's got to know that the Vancouver media environment isn't changing, right? Like, this is a market, a province that is hockey mad.
Yeah.
No cups yet.
Emphasis on mad right now.
Yeah. Is this a player who's effectively asking out with his words and his actions at this point?
I would have thought we would have heard actual tangible requests like that via the agent before this, if that was the case. Like, I would have thought that would have come out by now, that he was unhappy here and he wanted a clean slate. So I don't think that's it. I think he's just searching for something to blame right now rather than
so let me ask
take
this.
responsibility.
Do you think he would better in a smaller fishbowl environment for fans and media? A Columbus, a Buffalo.
Well, that's not a smaller fishbowl.
A Carolina.
I would say Anaheim or
Carolina
Utah.
and Anaheim, something like that. Do you think he would do better? Do you think that's what he needs? Do you think he knows that he would be better in that sort of environment?
See, I think there is the risk that without accountability, guys go to those things and just disappear. They just melt away. There's no pressure to be better. Everything has to be from inside. And the intestinal fortitude doesn't seem to be there with this player right now. So, you know, it's sort of like in school when you've got kids. Is your kid a self-learner? You know, self-starter. This guy doesn't seem to be that. Otherwise, I think we'd have seen a different level of commitment to being better here this season. So I think he needs the teaching. I think he needs, and that's also disappointing because I think that Rick Tocchet has probably tried a bunch of different things to make this work with Elias Pettersson. And that's failing as well. I don't know what the solution is. I think there's a chance that there would be a new team bump for Elias Pettersson if he arrives somewhere else. Mm-hmm. But until I see a reason given for, and again, I go back to a recent article in Canucks Army again on the statistical cliff that he has fallen off of when it comes to his skating. Until someone confirms what the reason is for that, I'm going to point to the skating as the biggest reason for all of these problems. And we saw the ice on the knee at the Four Nations. Mm-hmm. You know, it's most likely, I know we've put a lot of onus on this probably being between the years. I don't know. When you look at the data, that doesn't seem like between the years stuff. And when Rick Tocchet talks about moving the feet, you know when you don't move your feet? When it hurts to move your feet.
Well, the moving the feet is one thing. The shooting is another. Rob Williams with the tweet here. He came in the league averaging 2 shots on goal per game. And that had been the lowest of his career in his Calder Trophy season. And it's not surprising. Younger players are often a little more deferential. Well, it climbed to a high of 3.21 shots on goal per game in the 22-23 season. It fell back a little bit, yes, last year, but it was still the second best season of his career. Blakey's down to 1.82 shots on goal per game, which is a career low. Then there was Mike Kelly, the one-timer. God, where has the one-timer gone?
Bread and butter for a while there.
Mm-hmm. As Mike points out, not taking nearly as many and hitting the net on a lower percentage. Just 30 attempts this year in 51 games, 12 on net. There you go. 1 every 4 games, he gets a one-timer on net. Whereas last year, it was 43 and 82. It was 1 every second game. Previous year, it was 58.
1.5 per game.
2/3, yeah, 3/4 of the time.
But when if you don't get the separation, if it hurts to move, or you're scared of it hurting, if you all it takes, and for anybody that's played sports, you can recognize this even at the rec level, whether it's basketball, any of the shooting sports, that one quick move that allows you then a shooting alley. He doesn't have it right now. He doesn't have that one little burst, and at this point, we're not even really talking about skating per se. It's about that one little shimmy that allows you to see your shooting gap. He doesn't have it. If you don't get that separation, you don't want to take the shot because it's into the guy's shin pads, so you don't bother taking the shot. I think it all comes down to his health. I think I'm not going to lean on mental health here anymore. I don't. If he's firing bombs like it's the media's fault, I don't think it's mental health at this point. I think he just can't do what he's doing.
Justin Bourne tweeting out, I think what a lot are thinking now around the National Hockey League. Elias Pettersson is slowly drifting from, boy, some team should buy low on this guy, to, would you even want that contract if it costs you no assets to acquire? He's got a ceiling not a ton of players have, so the answer is probably yes, but it's getting close. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
First of all, I think he already has a bad rap amongst NHL head coaches. There's a pretty good book on who are coach killers. I think Elias is in that book. And for general managers, you going to stake your career and reputation on this guy at 11.6? You have to be awfully convinced, right, that he can get back to being that 100.
There are so many guys that have gone to the wall on this player. Mm-hmm. Like smart people, like guys like Drance that have, loved this player since the day, and for good reason. There was 4 or 5 seasons worth of data there that said this is an elite player in the league.
We had Gillis in here last month, sung his praises.
Yeah. But there is a moment where the data starts to build in a different direction where you have to respect that data too. And there is now, I would venture to say, enough data in the other direction. And unexplainedly.
And if he didn't have the no move kicking in July 1st, it would be all well and good to say, okay, lost season,
right,
wasn't able to train properly, 100%. Knee affected him, powdered a little bit, give him the summer, full summer. Let's hope he comes back re-energized with more enthusiasm,
yes,
better attitude, more maturity, and take another crack at it. But you don't have that luxury.
You don't. And that's exactly what I would say.
Gotta make
if that
call.
NMC wasn't kicking in July 1st, I would say you owe it to yourself to try one more summer.
Yep. I would agree.
But they are hamstrung by that NMC kicking in.
Okay, moving along. Victor Mancini made his Vancouver Canucks debut. This is the big defenseman acquired from the New York Rangers in the JT Miller trade. Officially Vittorio Mancini on the NHL game sheet. Did you see that?
Who knew?
Yeah.
Yes.
Not a big stat line there for the big fella. He had 1 hit, 1 giveaway, played just shy of 14 minutes in this hockey game. Effectively did not play any special teams, but big guy who can move. Like, I can understand why Frank Corrado and Darren Dreger and John Shannon and all our different guests at Ferraro have spoken up about this guy, like what they see in terms of his upside and potential in the National Hockey League. He played for Carson Soucy. Remember, Carson Soucy is apparently still on the block, and that was after Carson Soucy walked away from the Vegas game with a point and assist on the Jake DeBrusk goal. Arshdeep Bains, welcome back, Pride of Surrey, to the Vancouver Canucks lineup. He plays for Nils Oman, and the goaltending was exceptional for the Vancouver Canucks. Both nights, Kevin Lankinen stopping 32 of 35 in the 3-1 loss at Vegas, and Arturs Shilovs makes 30 of 32 saves in his first NHL start in nearly 3 months. The last time we saw Artie with the Big Canucks was November 27th. He gets shelled in Pittsburgh, giving up 5 in a 5-4 loss. He hadn't been very good in the previous start before that. Has just one NHL win on the season, but he did his part against Utah, and that was maybe the best development for the Vancouver Canucks this weekend.
And it has to be said that, if you just looked at the score lines, you'd be like, oh, the Canucks are continuing with their fabulous defensive play. Well, the scores were low, but unlike in previous games where the shots were rarely above 25 for the opponent, the opponent got to 30 both nights here, and that's a little bit concerning. It's obvious why, no Quinn Hughes, but the play before the break, that was isolated. The ability to keep those opponents below 25 shots, that was a blip without Quinn Hughes in the lineup. They can return to that with Quinn back. But I think what we saw there was pretty rarefied air for this group without Quinn Hughes in the lineup, and it's a good thing he's coming back because they can't ask that of Shilovs and Lankinen each and every night.
Vegas was 72 shot attempts, Utah with 59, so that was pretty high totals even beyond the ones that got on goal. Let's hear from Artie. Always loved his personality. He talked about playing in a tight game like that against Utah and his performance.
Really, you get a PK, they managed to score it, and it's hard to come back from that, and it's tight game, and they managed to score more.
30 saves from yourself, some incredible stops this evening. How did you feel?
I feel good. Guys did a good job, in penalty kill, covering the dangerous guys. Giving me the far side guys, from the blue line. Boxing out pretty well. So I think we did a good job there.
And good for him because I think he would have had some doubts about himself, understandably.
If he gets shelled last night, Blake, then they are in some spot, right? Because you're back-to-back. There's not a lot of travel between L.A. and Anaheim, but you're back-to-back again. Later this week, you have 2 additional sets of back-to-backs next month. Who knows where Thatcher Demko will be health-wise.
But in the bigger picture, Matt, I think they would doubt the asset, and I think the asset would doubt the asset to some degree as well, based on recent run of play. Now, Shilovs has been playing very well at the AHL level.
Yes.
So it would stand to reason that this is what you see, and that's good that there wasn't you don't want him to become a quad A goaltender where he can go on that run in the AHL, comes up here and stinks out the joint. The fact that he was able to carry it up from the AHL, that's really good for Artur Shilovs.
Yeah, 10-4 in the AHL with a .906 save percentage at .243 goals against average this year. Jake DeBrusk scores in both games for the Canucks. We know he's a streaky scorer. He's set a goal of 30. He's now up to 21. So well within reach. He leads Brock Besser by 3 goals for the club lead. And Rick Tocchet talking about shooting, too much double clutching, poor shot selection, not getting the shots on the target to extend possession. We mentioned the shot totals for Vegas and for Carolina, Blake. Well, the Canucks put 34 on the goal in Vegas, and that was with 37 either blocked or missing the net. So from a shots attempt point of view, it was just fine against Vegas. Well, come back against Utah, just 15 on net. 36 are blocked or missed, but that's just 51 shot attempts. So a little too few, especially in what was a 1-goal game throughout. Right? One goal or tied throughout that game was. What are our friends at Yellow Dog and Neighborhood up to?
Well, lots of things on special, including the fabulous Yellow Dog Squirrel Chaser Hazy Pale Ale, the 4-packs on special for the month of February. Look for it on sale at private and government liquor stores. We know it's one of your faves, Matt.
Indeed. So Pettersson and Hughes both left the practice sheet on Friday. Tocchet went on to say that Patterson was day-to-day with an injury from the Four Nations. He, of course, was seen icing famously that right knee. He looked to be wearing some sort of brace or something as well. It turns out he was also sick or had a sore throat. There was good news on Quinn Hughes. That is coming up with Darren Dreger here. We'll let Darren tell you what he is hearing in terms of Hughes' return to play, but it looks good for Wednesday. Thatcher Demko is now officially on IR. And I know JPAT and the RinkWide fellas were having this conversation yesterday. I've pulled the tweet from a particularly cranky Canucks account. No cups ever. But point stands here. What a disaster the Canucks core has been in 24-25. Thatcher Demko, cooked, or at the very least, so injured that he can hardly string together runs of games. EP40, disaster season. Yeah. No argument there. JT Miller, gone, not replaced. Fair. I mean, unless Philip Hedl can become a top 2 centerman here. Brock Besser won't reach 40, might not even reach 30. No, not at 18 with 20-some games to go. And Quinn, great, but will he stay? The account says Canucks floor is being competitive, but the ceiling is quite low. Yes. What direction is this management group taking this organization? I think it's a fair question at this point. As mentioned earlier, you have bled some value in the JT Miller trade, right? You didn't trade him at his height. You had to take less than what you otherwise would have gotten for JT Miller. Can you afford to bleed any more value, particularly with Elias and Thatcher Demko not exactly at their highest ebb either?
Matt, this is why...
Because you need top centermen back, and those are really hard to get.
And the UFA class is so bland this summer. Well, it's not bland. It's bad. It's bad. There's nobody there. Well, who's there?
We talked about Sam Bennett last week. Now, he's not a scorer at that level, but he's a very, very useful...
But he stands alone as a 20-something UFA center.
Yeah.
It's Brock Nelson.
It's Brock Nelson.
It's John Tavares.
It's guys who are older in the tooth.
The winger class is quite nice. The winger class is quite nice.
Marner and
Rantanen.
Ehlers.
Yeah, those are 3 crown jewels right there.
Matt Duchene and Michael Granlund, also UFA center iceman to
not top 6 anymore.
Giroux, far too old. Ryan Donato.
So you're talking about a trade, and that's why I think a Brock Besser trade is at least 50-50. Because if you can get back, I don't think you're getting a center for Brock Besser, but whatever asset you get there, if you can get a future there, can you then flip that first rounder or both of your first rounders that you will have then for the draft, along with probably a warm body of some sort to another team for their middling centerman who's younger and they're behind the times, behind their developmental arc. And again, who that guy is, whether it's Zegras or Cousins or whomever, take your pick. But those are the kinds of things I think the Canucks are forcing themselves into. Otherwise, where are you getting your top 6 centers from?
It's a very good question.
If you draft a center, great. See in 4 years, where they're drafting from. I mean, I don't think the Canucks are sinking so far to be, a real good bet in the lottery here. So you're talking about a centerman that's developed in 4 or 5 years. Are they really abandoning the Quinn Hughes era? They finally get a trophy-winning defenseman.
No,
and there's no team around them?
You can't do that.
So
you absolutely can't do that. So the way I see it, Blake, much like we saw with the Bo Horvat, Dosai-Do trades with the Islanders, and then again with Detroit to get Philip Hronek, much like we saw with the JT Miller trade with the Rangers, and again using partial assets to go get Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor. I think if you're making a Brock Besser trade for futures, you are immediately looking to package some of those assets with potentially others and go on the hunt to acquire a top 2 center iceman. And I can't believe we are inside of 2 weeks to the trade deadline.
Yeah.
A week from Friday, everybody, the March 7th trade deadline in the National Hockey League is upon us.
And DFO's got you covered. Mark your calendars. The Daily Faceoff Trade Deadline Special coming your way March 7th, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern. But for us, it's, of course, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. And the DFO live stream is going to be live, breaking down every single move as it happens. You get the reaction, the analysis, and all the behind-the-scenes drama of the biggest trades. Plus, there'll be special guests lined up throughout the show to give you exclusive insights from some of the biggest names in the game. From the blockbuster deals to those little surprise moves, they'll have you covered. Tune into the Daily Faceoff's YouTube channel and follow Daily Faceoff on socials on March 7th. And we'll be breaking down the biggest deadline day in hockey. You won't want to miss it. Great companion show to the Canucks focus you'll get here on Sakaris and Price that same day.
I wanted to get to this as well because Kevin Lankinen met the media late Friday afternoon after we had done recording our show, publishing our show. He got the 5-year deal at $4.5 million, and just listening to him all season long. And we did an interview with Chris Mason, the former Nashville Predators goalie and Nashville broadcaster, early in the season, right after Lankinen signed, to give us some insight about this new Vancouver Canuck, and said he is a pro's pro. He takes things seriously, like he evaluates his own performance. He keeps his own data. He looks at it, looks at shooters. He just seems like he's got such a great head on his shoulders, Kevin Lankinen, and is doing his utmost to maximize his talent and be everything he can be in the National Hockey League. He just seems really relatable and approachable as well. I've sort of loved the commentary from Lankinen about the organization, about his teammates, even while he's been the guy who has been shining through much of the year. And he's asked on Friday about extending with the Canucks, and his quote was, "When we started talking with the Canucks, I felt like there was something there. How things have turned out has been amazing. I was looking for the opportunity, and I got it." So sounds like some loyalty at play as well. And boy, not only was he looking for an opportunity, he bet on himself, was looking for his payday. He got one. Congratulations.
It's
been a great storyline in what has been a difficult Canucks season.
It has, and I understand why they didn't. I probably wouldn't have myself, but there is a world where they could have got him on a multi-year deal at the start of the season, I think.
Oh, yeah, I mean, nobody was offering multi-years at the beginning of the year. Yeah.
But if they said here's 2 years at 1.5, he
kind of like the
probably buys.
They did. Yep.
He probably bites, and then you got one more year.
Well,
but I mean, again,
the hindsight there is, okay, Shelovs may not be ready to be the backup, but we're so impressed with what he did in the playoffs that he is the heir apparent, or at very least the guy we anticipate will be the backup to Thatcher Demko, or at least was hoping Thatcher Demko would be healthy enough to be a number one starter, alas.
Hey, Shelovs started the season. They had higher hopes for Shelovs at the outset.
He started game one.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get to our menu. It is brought to you by our friends at Greta. We had a couple of incredible watch parties there at Greta during the Four Nations tournament. It is a fantastic spot for all the games, home and away. We'll be there for another Canucks Army viewing party coming up. More on that as we get closer to your minutes from the arena and stadium. Come by pregame, postgame. Check out the great street food menu, the arcade that everybody talks about, weekly drink specials at Greta, 50 West Cordova. Greta Bar, let the games begin. We got Darren Dreger coming up here, then Jeff Patterson, and we wanted to connect with our buddy Al Murdoch, Rogers Arena PA announcer, and yes, he was also the voice behind the Four Nations Faceoff when the tournament moved to Boston, making all those calls of the goals and, of course, of the gold medalists. So fantastic talk with Al, who is back at it this week, Stadium Series in Columbus at the Horseshoe. He does all the big NHL events. So all that is coming up here on today's Sakaris and Price, including Dreger with what he's hearing on the injuries that the Canucks have, and also on the possibility of Demko and Besser trades, not to mention later in the program this exciting debut from Vancouver Whitecaps FC and their new Canadian star. Quite a debut for the Caps in MLS play. Time now for our Bet365 Bets of the Day. This segment proudly brought to you by Bet365. I couldn't help but notice the Winnipeg Jets are going for a 10th consecutive
They are indeed.
victory tonight against the San Jose Sharks. Now, they won their game coming out of the break Saturday against St. Louis, but I would think 10 in a row has a way of getting your attention, not to mention Kyle Connor was snubbed, right? Not chosen to be in uniform for the U.S. in that final game against Canada. Connor Hellebuck, who as great as he is, does not have a lot of signature victory. I think the Jets can find motivation against a low light tonight. There's no value in just picking them straight up or even minus a goal and a half. So I'm going to go correct score here. 5-1 Jets paying at plus 1,200. Big swing.
I think people are still really sleeping on the Jets right now. Like that.
Well, I think if you were to ask the average hockey fan what team is leading the league right now, it's Washington, but
by 1 point over Winnipeg.
by 1 point over Winnipeg, or what team is leading the West, I would bet you get a lot of Dallas and Vegas before you get to Winnipeg.
And Winnipeg has a 7-point lead in the conference.
Yeah,
Like they're running away with it right now.
yeah, much like Washington has a 12-point lead in the East.
Golden Knights and Kings in action inside the division here for the Canucks to watch tonight.
You need a Golden Knights win here, everybody.
Just let them go run away and hide and try and take the Kings for the victory. But when you look at the betting lines, I think your best bet is to take the Golden Knights minus 1.5 at plus 225.
Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Darren Dreger coming up next. Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center.
Like Matt Sakaris rising out of his burrow in late February to look for his shadow. It is that time of the year to roll up to win at Tim Hortons. You know how you do that. Millions of amazing prizes with just the swipe of a thumb on the Tim's app. Imagine turning your routine coffee run, that afternoon coffee. You don't really think much about it. It's just part of your day. You turn it into an unforgettable vacation with Sell-Off Vacations. A $1,000 Rakuten cash prize or an all-new, all-electric 2025 Volkswagen ID Buzz vehicle. The simple joy of winning a free coffee, though, too, right? Everybody's had that experience. I've got a donut in my future. But you only have until March 23rd. So open up that Tim's app and get rolling. This is our game, Canada. This is our game.
Indeed.
Don't let this chance of millions of amazing prices pass you by. Play Roll Up to Win on the Tim's app now. Rules apply. Canada only. No purchase necessary. Visit the Tim's app for details.
I did not see my shadow. Do you think Elias sees shadows?
Oh, probably.
Out there? I think
he seems to see a lot of things. Yeah.
Shadows. As we welcome in TSN Hockey Insider, one half of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast, Mr. Darren Dreger, NHL Insider. And it was sore throat for Pettersson on the weekend?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, like something like that. And I mean, I don't think that'd be much of a surprise, despite the speculation. So many guys got sick with some type of flu bug or whatever at the Four Nations. And maybe that's the lingering effects of that. But that was what I was told, was that it was nothing more than a sore throat.
All right. Hughes and Demko, what are you hearing there?
Well, positivity is what I'm getting. Quinn Hughes, had to be reasonably close for them to do what they did, the dance they did with the Vancouver Canucks and USA Hockey and all of that, for him to even be considered. So I'm going to list him as probable for Wednesday's game. So not absolutely a lock, but they like the way things have trended, and I think that he's really close to being good to go. And now Demko, he skated the other day, right? So that gives them a positive vibe. I believe they're scheduled to practice tomorrow being Tuesday. So best case scenario is likely in the next 10 days, give or take a day or two either side. So again, trending in the right direction.
For anybody that was worried about the relationship between the Canucks and Hughes with regards to not having him fly back, I mean, there's redemption here, isn't it? The fact that he didn't play on the weekend, because he was sorely missed on the weekend. Canucks had no offensive push whatsoever without him. They needed him in their lineup, and he wasn't able to go for them. So, you know, I think it all played out as it should have, no?
Agreed. And I thought Quinn handled his media availability with class and honesty. And that's what we've grown accustomed to from the captain of the Vancouver Canucks, right? It was fair to question the restrictions and the rules around the roster at this event, right? I mean, and he did. And he didn't bury the NHL or the Players Association, just simply stated fact. You wonder if it would have made more sense to create a vehicle, an avenue where you could have extra players at the Four Nations if those players wanted to go. Now, the Players Association would say, yeah, but you just don't want to have to put a player in a position to say no. And most players are going to want to have the opportunity to play for their country. So anyway, that aside, if he were healthy enough to play, he would have played, right? I mean, if he were healthy enough when they had to make that call, you know, at 5 o'clock Eastern, Monday, whatever the day was prior to the Four Nations Faceoff, then they would have made that call. But, you know, the Vancouver Canucks didn't play the role of the heavy here. They just recognized what Quinn knew and what Team USA knew. So, and, you know, given the restrictions and the rules that govern what it took for that player to actually get on the ice, it made sense for the Vancouver Canucks to basically step in and say, no, we need you to just stay put here with all the uncertainty.
Tell us about that Kevin Lankinen extension, Dregs, because that thing seemingly came out of left field last week.
Yeah, it kind of did, and you know we've kept tabs on it. To be fair, and the last time we had this conversation, the messaging that I was getting from the agents involved here was that, you know, it was really pretty slow, dating back to mid-January, where, they were having discussions, but it didn't seem like there were any progressive talks that led, you know, the agents to determine that, we're close on something here. But sometimes that's all it takes. And then about a day or two before they announced the 5-year extension, that was when it really picked up steam. So I think really what it is recognition by Patrick Allvin and the Vancouver Canucks. Okay, well, we're looking at all the comps here, and you can throw whatever one you want. Blackwood, Logan Thompson. I mean, go down the list. The recent signings around the National Hockey League, I think, would encourage Vancouver to act and get this deal done. And then on top of that, you know, you have the somewhat uncertainty of Thatcher Demko and the story that Kevin Lankinen has been this year in Vancouver. So the timing did make sense.
And of course, has created speculation here about Demko's future in Vancouver.
And toss in the fact that Artur Shilovs has a great start. Not that you react to one start, but it's a reminder of an alternate plot line where, I mean, theoretically, the Canucks could go Lankinen and Shilovs next year if they wanted to pull off something surprising, either now or during the summer, right?
Yeah, and now feels like a big stretch to me, Blake, to be honest here.
Yeah.
You know, Demko has one more year on his contract, so they can't engage until July 1st anyway. So they're looking at it, and, well, number one, they need Thatcher Demko to have the hockey gods smile down and this guy play healthy for the remainder of the year, whatever that looks like. You know, get them locked into a playoff spot, then maybe have some postseason success, and then maybe that's where it gets really interesting, and the idea of trade maybe becomes more of a reality or an option at that point. Hey, if Demko's camp comes out and says, all right, well, we know what the injury list looks like. but he still tracks as this valuable a goaltender by NHL standards. And the Canucks don't like the numbers. Okay, well, what are they going to do? If they're comfortable with Kevin Lankinen and Sheloffs or whatever their goaltending depth happens to be, then of course you entertain the possibility of trade. But I could be wrong on this. I don't think I'm wrong on this. I don't know how you entertain that between now and March 7th. There's too much at stake here for the Canucks.
Okay, so like Carolina, Edmonton, a team looking to get over. Detroit, Columbus, a team looking to get in for the first time in a while. You don't see any big offers or offers coming from the market on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that the managers are calling. Why wouldn't you? Right? I mean, that's just part of everyday due diligence. But I mean, as we learn every single year, all you got to do is qualify for the playoffs, and then who knows what happens after that. And this is an important year for the Vancouver Canucks. We've already talked about Elias Pettersson and what might shake down there moving forward into the offseason, all of that. Well, they're kind of stuck, but they still have, again, the playoffs as their primary focus. They're not looking to help the Edmonton Oilers or another team with an A-grade goaltender. And what does that offer look like for Alvin and company to even remotely consider making a trade like that? I mean, it would have to be mammoth, and it would probably come at the extent of costing a team key roster players, right? Key roster players from the team that they're trying to win with in the playoffs. So it doesn't add up to me. I mean, I've been wrong in the past, so maybe this one is one of those that's out there in left field, but I just don't see it.
I think people recognize that is a storyline, but after back-to-back spectacular goaltending performances this weekend, they realize they've got cover right now.
In two losses. Yeah. That's the other thing, too, right? In two losses.
They've got cover there. Mm-hmm. Their biggest issue right now is, A, there's no number one center right now that's playing like a number one center, and B, if you got rid of the number one center that's masquerading as one right now, where are you going to get the next one? Because the UFA class has no such thing. The Vancouver Canucks must be tying themselves in knots right now, wondering how did they go from Pettersson, Miller, 100-point guys in the one and two center spots, to wondering what the future is for their top six.
They're stuck, man, and in some respects are being crippled, by the Patterson contract right now, and. Again, not to go into the mud with this guy, because I still have some level of belief in the hockey player that Elias Pettersson is capable of being. But until he gets there, he is literally damaging the Vancouver Canucks, because that $11.6 million cap hit is just too tough. You can't have those dollars invested and not get a top player playing for you. And that's unfortunately where they're at. And you laid it out beautifully, Blake. I mean, it's not like number one centers, number two centers are growing on trees somewhere around the arena. It's not that easy. And it is even more difficult in season to try and grab those assets via trade. Now, I do look at some of the clubs around the league, right? What is St. Louis going to do here? They've got some interesting pieces. We've talked about Braden Shen as a possibility with some clubs. He's got trade protection. He's a player who's on the other side of 30, but still has plenty of game and scoring ability left. Is he a number one? Probably not, but he'd be fine as a number two on a good team. So is there a fit like that? And I'm not suggesting that, Shen should be the player that they're chasing here. But keep in mind, Rick Tocchet and Craig Berube, in some respects, share the same brain. I mean, they're good. They're buddies, but they coach the same way. So there's no doubt they would have had conversations historically about what Braden Shen is and was in helping the Blues win the Stanley Cup in 2019. So for me, that's the kind of stuff that Patrick Allvin is probably trying to cultivate in any conversation. And maybe that does take you into the offseason, where there's more flexibility, and you've got a real hard look at teams who know that they have to renovate, or they're trying to retool on the fly as well.
Dregs, they have re-signed Marcus Pettersson, they've re-signed Drew O'Connor and Kevin Lankinen, and keep telling us they need more time to evaluate Brock Besser. Everyone here seems to think the writing is on the wall. and that Besser will not be a Vancouver Canuck next season. Let me know what you're hearing. What do you think? Is there any chance there's a trade there, even a trade for futures, if they're not in playoff position? For Besser
and look,
at the
I think
deadline?
we can appreciate why the Vancouver Canucks feel like they need more time. But you know what? Maybe Brock Besser needs more time, right? I mean, that cuts both ways. He's a pending unrestricted free agent. We've talked on the show before about, okay, well, what about Rick Tocchet? If Tocchet is back at head coach and they've got those answers, maybe that encourages Besser to more actively engage. I'm in the camp that is thinking that he's probably not going to be traded. And those close to Brock don't think he's going to be traded. And the reason is, again, because of how much it matters for the Vancouver Canucks to make the playoffs and then potentially do something in the playoffs. So there is value now in embracing certain players as own rentals, as Dave Nonis used to refer to them back in the day. And maybe that's what Besser ends up being. Look, so the player walks and you don't get anything in return. Okay, is that the end of the world? You're getting the money that you can reinvest in the market. You're hoping that Brock Besser is going to give you the type of hockey that you need to make some noise in the Stanley Cup playoffs, all that. So I think there are a number of things that are being juggled, but those close to Besser don't think that he's likely getting traded.
That's a first-round pick, though, if you do trade him, isn't it?
Probably. Yeah, I mean, based on, Philadelphia is trying to get a first-round pick for Scott Laughton. I mean, they've told teams that. They told teams that, probably in the offseason, right? So if you're getting, with all due respect to Scotty Laughton, who's a nice player and a high-character guy, I would think that, and then look at what we see at the deadline in years past in some of the prices that are paid for a player of Brock Besser's quality. So, yeah, if someone lobs a decent first-round pick, then there's a tough decision that Patrick Allvin is going to have to make.
Marvelous stuff, Darren. One more of these before we do it for real on March 7th. I'm looking forward to it, my man. Thank you for this. Until next week.
Okay, guys, have a great week.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Sick Harrison Price from the Historic Wall Center.
It's been a while since we had our test drive in the Toyota BZ4X, but I pulled up beside a vehicle the other day and I was like, wow, that's a gorgeous looking vehicle. And I looked on the back. Oh, yeah, the Toyota emblem. BZ4X. Yeah, that was it. That was the vehicle. You'll not forget your test drive in the BZ4X. Get behind the wheel. Go to your nearest Pacific Toyota dealer today and find out what all the hubbub is about with the newest addition to the Toyota fully electric lineup. Great rebates and incentives up to $6,500 there. You can finance a BZ4X from 3.29% APR for 36 months. Visit shoptoyota.ca or visit your local Pacific Toyota dealer today. And to incentivize that visit, to get you excited about that visit, they've got a fun contest going on right now. The grand prize includes 2 tickets to the Kanika Minolta Champions Club at Rogers Arena for the April 6th game, Canucks versus Golden Knights. And you get 2 Canucks jerseys in this contest as well if you want to win. Check out the link in our episode description or follow Toyota Pacific on Instagram and Facebook. That's at Toyota Pacific for your chance to enter. Contest open to residents of BC and Yukon, age of majority.
Here's Jeff Patterson, the host of RinkWide Vancouver, and, of course, our Canucks reporter. He was busy with 2 games on the weekend, both losses. And, Jeff, they just can't score goals.com.
No, Blake, does the contest come with any guarantees of goals on the night in question?
Does not, unfortunately. No. Okay. They may, though, if you're wearing those jerseys that you win, they may ask you to come off the bench, and because you probably will have as much luck as the rest of them.
We may need to mock up those shirts again, Jeff. Another batch.
Yeah.
Yeah, vibe check on a Monday. The goodwill that was there before the break has gone completely out of the balloon. Yeah, tough to watch the game in Utah. I thought they played hard in Vegas. Third period push there, a couple of goals that didn't count. Like, I thought they did some decent things against a good Vegas team. But back-to-backs are becoming an issue for this hockey club. 1 win in 6 back-to-back games. The second half, at least, a back-to-back. You can't throw those games away. And yet they have picked up 2 of a possible 12 points where every point matters. And, oh, yeah, they're running headlong into another back-to-back. And then, as we talked about last week, there are a few more here coming up after the trade deadline as well. So that's a challenge. It seems like everything's a challenge for the Vancouver Canucks right now. And, yeah, I mean, look, they're in the entertainment business. Somebody's got to remind them of that. You're not going to win every night. I get that. But on the nights that you're going to be bad, they've found a way to be really bad. And really, just any sort of lack of flair and panache and whatnot. It's just an absolute grind to gain the zone and do anything with the puck. And that was on full display again, unfortunately, in what was a big game. Now, Utah's within 4 points of them. They still have another head-to-head matchup left. So on a night when the Canucks get to the third period and a 1-1 tie for the second night in a row and get nothing to show for it, Calgary pulls out a late win. Utah wins. Anaheim, don't look now. But that game on Thursday at the Honda Center has some significance in terms of Anaheim creeping closer to the Vancouver Canucks. There's a sentence I didn't ever think I would utter at the outset of the season. So, yeah, they're above the playoff bar for the time being, but not going to stay there long if they play more games like they did over the weekend.
And the back-to-back stuff is worth watching. As you note, the Kings and Ducks later this week, back-to-back. Blake and I noticed this next month as well. You got Montreal, Calgary back-to-back, and Chicago, Utah back-to-back. So lots of back-to-backs coming up here for the Canucks. Jeff, what did you make of what Tocchet had to say about Pettersson and about Pettersson's reaction to IMAC?
Yeah, look, Rick Tocchet's run out of answers, clearly. If there were buttons to be pushed, he would have pushed them all. Would have hammered them now, 57 games into the season. But we've discussed this as the season has gone along. It just feels like Rick Tocchet, like pretty much everybody else, can't get through to Elias Pettersson. So Elias Pettersson seems to know best, and yet we're judging him on his actions on the ice, and the actions aren't doing much to support his case. And so post-game, if he wants to say it's the media's fault, which is essentially what he said, and I wasn't there in the room, so I didn't hear the tone. I didn't know if there was some sort of attempt at, cheeky humor in it. I read it on a screen, and it comes across as he doesn't like dealing with the media. Well, I think that's been abundantly clear for a while now. Guess what? It was the same media group that was there day in, day out when he put up 102 points. It's the same media group that followed him when he won his Rookie of the Year, and in fact, he made the conscious decision to remember Jason Botchford as he got to the stage in Vegas to claim his Rookie of the Year award. So he didn't seem to have huge issues with the media then, and when the going's been good. And I say this all the time. Like on the nights that guys have big nights in the NHL and score hat tricks, they never seem to thank the media. Nor should they. But it's always the media's fault, right? Like, we're not out there on the ice. It's been painted so clearly that this year of all years, out on the road, quite often there is no media. And, I've had some people online asking me about the comments by Patterson. Look, I don't travel, so that eliminates half the road game, or half the games on the schedule. But when they're at home, I'm at every practice, I'm at every game day skate. I'm not there post-game because of RinkWide. But I was racking my brain today. I believe my last interaction with Elias Pettersson in the locker room was ahead of the Washington game on January 25th, a month ago. A guy that's there daily. The last time that I put a microphone in Elias Pettersson's face, like this, I'm just trying to make it so clear to people, this idea that there's a burden on these guys to do daily media, to face the music and the hard questions. It's been a month. I've been there every day for every availability. After the Washington game, they went out on the road. They made trades. When they came back, the new guys were the flavor of the week. So nobody talked to Elias Pettersson in that week that they were at home. Then the Four Nations, and now they start out of the Four Nations out on the road. In terms of facing this gauntlet, that it's too much. It's overbearing. I can't do it anymore. It's been a month since I've talked to him, so just take that for what it's worth.
And Quinn Hughes seems to be A-okay with the media. Quinn Hughes is the guy that has been injured. He had this whole Team USA issue. He seems to be just fine.
I'll take it a step further, Blake, and say Tyler Myers, to me, is the example of how to deal with it. People wanted to run Tyler Myers out of town. The media, the fan base, like people just had no time for this guy and the way that he was playing, the money that he was making. And through it all, he has been the model of grace and professionalism and stands in there and takes the slings. And now that his play has been better and people have wanted to talk to him more, that hasn't changed him. He steps in there, answers it, had a great chat with him ahead of the gold medal or the championship game last week. An American, obviously born in the U.S., but has been a Canadian for most of his life. But we had some fun with that and which side he was on. And so it can be done. It can be done. And we're talking about a player with a letter on his jersey in Patterson. We haven't even talked about what he makes, but that comes with the territory. In his own words, he has asked management, told management he wants to be here. He wants to be the guy. And then when the hard questions come, well, it's the media.
Yeah, well, Tyler Myers is not a punk. Is this a player who is basically asking out, Jeff? Is that what you're resigned to?
Well, he better be careful what he asks for. He better be careful what he asks for because he has no trade protection. Like, if he winds up in Buffalo or Columbus, like, say what you will about those cities and those markets, they're covered heavily. Even Columbus has guys on the beat and in that room on a daily basis. Aaron Portzline's been at this as long as we have and covers the Columbus Blue Jackets terrifically. And Buffalo's got some guys that will ask some pointed questions. In today's NHL, like, even if it's Carolina or Anaheim or some of the, who we would consider softer media markets, there are still people from NHL.com that are asking questions on a daily basis. Maybe they're not as pointed as some of the others, but if you're making what you're making, people are going to want to know. They're going to be fascinated. And I've in 25 years covering the Canucks, have never seen a season like this and really have never dealt with a player like this who is such an enigma. And, it seems to be getting tougher by the day to pull out anything from him. People are curious. And the best you can do is throw it back at the media. Like, come on. Your general managers questioned your maturity level. Like, I sit here and I wonder, like, does Elias Pettersson blame the media when Jim Rutherford said what he said ahead of the JT Miller because it appeared in a newspaper article? Is that the media's fault? Or is it the president of hockey operations, coming off the top rope from the corner office? So is it a cry to get out? Maybe, but he better be really careful about what he wishes for because I'm not sure that it's going to be a whole lot better in a lot of places.
And the end result here is that on the ice, he is the last big problem with the Vancouver Canucks. The defense is playing just fine.
Well, Demko.
But the goaltending's outstanding without Demko.
Fair. Demko's injury is a problem, but yes, the goaltending this weekend was outstanding.
But they've got the cover right now for Thatcher Demko's injury. What they need is a top six center, and Hedl is a bit of a third-line center masquerading as a second right now. They needed a first-line center right now more than ever. And they're going to get Quinn Hughes back, and he's going to help them create more offense. There's no question about that. So, again, that underlines the fact there's one gaping hole. There's one huge problem, and it's the first-line center. Like, there's just no getting around it. It's not like the magnifying glass is going away anytime soon here.
No, and let's be clear. No goals in 11 games, one in the 17 games that he has played since Christmas. Now, he missed a handful of games out of the Christmas break, but since he got back in the lineup, it's one goal in 17 games. It came at home against the Buffalo Sabres. Guys, we talked about this on RinkWide last night. He has 2 road goals all season. One in Anaheim and one in Pittsburgh. Neither of those teams is a Stanley Cup contender. Neither of those teams lives above the playoff bar. And his goal in Anaheim, if you recall, it grazed his jersey, and they had to review it. And originally, I think it was a Quinn Hughes goal, and it was changed to Elias Pettersson. So one goal off his stick and one goal off his jersey on the road for $11.6 million. It is wild. And so, yes, I mean, they are missing all sorts of dynamic thrust offensively. The problem is, like, when Quinn Hughes gets back there, I mean, he makes the Canucks a better team, without a doubt. And he's fun to watch, and he brings an enjoyment in covering and watching this hockey club that's not there right now. But, like, when he's been healthy, he's racked up points, but it hasn't rubbed off on anybody else. And so just getting Quinn Hughes back doesn't automatically make Elias Pettersson more productive or make this team, make the forwards a whole lot better. And that's kind of been the disconnect all season, is that how does Quinn, for all the talk of Tocchet's system and, nobody can score in Tocchet's system except the defenseman can get to 59 points and has no issues producing, but everybody else around him has just had a season that's really in the gutter. DeBrusk, I suppose, notwithstanding, he's done what he's been expected to do. But even some of the guys that started well, like Kiefer Sherwood, got off to this great start. And the effort and the energy and the hits are all there, but he's got 2 goals in his last 22 games. So his offense has dropped off. Pius Suter has dropped off. Connor Garland has 1 point in his last 8 games. Like, where did the Energizer Bunny that is Connor Garland, like, where has he gone as well? So, yes, Elias Pettersson is the hot button issue without a doubt and stands alone. But there are others that are struggling too. And all these low-scoring games, guys, they open the scoring both games here over the weekend. They get to the third period 1-1. Like, a goal from anybody could have swung either one of those games. And instead, close doesn't count.
And given their OT record, Jeff, they clearly just don't play very well when it's tight. Like, they don't rise to the occasion here.
And yet the games before the break, the Toronto game was a tight game, and they found a way there. And San Jose, they needed a penalty shot in overtime, but they did grind that one out. I think that, again, and it goes back to they're getting the goaltending defensively with the structure and the changes that they've made there. These are all winnable games. They're in these games, but ultimately you can't win a game 1-1. You do need a second goal. I guess in the NHL you can get to a shootout 1-1 and then try and win it there. But it shouldn't be this monumental ask to get 2 goals in a hockey game. And yet they have 9 goals in the last 5 games that they've played. So, and of those, 4 at 5-on-5, 4 on the power play, and then the Drew O'Connor penalty shot goal. So 4 5-on-5 goals in the last 5 games. That is a really difficult way to think that you're going to maintain your hold on a playoff spot. And even if you do, what do they look like if they sneak into the playoffs? Unless there is some sort of fundamental change with this group, it would not be a long stay in the postseason.
So is your prescription better be a seller than a buyer here at the deadline, Jeff?
I think so. What they've got here, it's not working. It's not helping them. And this idea that adding to this group, I don't like the idea of spending significant assets. If they want to tinker, and if it could be a player out and a player in and just try and alter the chemistry a little bit, maybe. But, just look at the way that they're going. And again, all roads lead back to Elias Pettersson. But, Kiefer Sherwood, as I talked about, on a good team, he's probably a third-line guy. Drew O'Connor, brought in on a good team, he's probably a third-line guy. Well, right now, both of those players are playing top 6 minutes and top 6 roles. Brock Boeser, you can imagine there's probably a fair bit on his mind, and it's kind of looked like it in a lot of the games here of late. Scored a big goal against Toronto, turned out to be the game winner, but the 2 games here over the weekend I thought was remarkably quiet. You go down the list, and who are the candidates here? And anytime you get to a guy that really should be a third liner, you're asking too much. And so, yes, this is a group that has stripped away some of the elite level talent that it had, and the one guy that remains here is so woefully underperforming. It's just, this idea of waiting with Elias Pettersson, and I don't think they're going to trade Elias Pettersson before the trade deadline. Like, I do think he's here through the duration of this season and the playoffs. I can't imagine that there's a contender out there that's watched the Four Nations, has watched this season, and thought, that's what we need to bolster our team here down the stretch run. So I think Pettersson remains through the season. But what does it look like? I don't see a switch being flipped in any way. And we know the struggles that he had in the playoffs last year. The way it stands right now, if they do creep into the playoffs, they're running straight into Winnipeg or Vegas in the first round. How could you possibly think that Elias Pettersson, in his current state, is going to be a difference maker in a playoff series against one of those heavyweights in the Western Conference?
Jeff, what are we doing here? This is a 26 win in 57 game team that is minus 14 in goal differential. What are we doing here? This,
I think it's absolutely fair to ask about the direction now. This management group has taken the Vancouver Canucks. They inherited one of the sexiest young rosters in the National Hockey League, with one of the deepest spines down the middle, the envy of a lot of teams in the National Hockey League, and they've stripped away 2/3 of that, and the one piece that remains is having the season and is now in the middle of this firestorm. they've tried to address some of the needs in the back end, and I think they've made some strides there. But again, this idea of going into games and trying to win 1-0 or 2-1, you can stay in those games. But the minute your opponent gets 2, all of a sudden now you need what feels like, a bushel full. And there are going to be nights you fall behind. And yeah, they've opened the scoring the last couple of games, but guess what? They're not going to open the scoring every game the rest of the way. They're going to fall behind. They're going to trail. And at that point, do they have enough push? Do they have enough thrust offensively? And right now it feels the answer is no. And so to your question, Blake, I'm not sure. Like, I don't see a vision or a direction to make the Vancouver Canucks a Stanley Cup contender. And I think it is fair now to ask, like, what is Quinn Hughes' view on all of this? Because it feels like every move that should be made in the short term here should be about trying to support this guy and build around him and prove to him that this team can get back on the path. But in the here and now, and given what happened last week with the uncertainty around Four Nations and all of that, it just feels like there's way more questions than answers right now. And we don't hear from Quinn Hughes because he's injured. I hope he gets back in the lineup here soon. I've got a piece of Canucks Army coming out later today, wondering if these games that Quinn Hughes has missed, are they hurting or helping his chances of repeating as a Norris winner? When he's out of the lineup, it's so clear how much they miss him and what he means, but there has to be a threshold as well. And he's missed 10 games so far. I still think he can win the Norris missing just 10 games, but if that becomes 15 somewhere along the line, Makar and Werenski aren't slowing down anytime soon here, and I do think that voters would take that into consideration.
Yeah. All right, let's end on a happy note here, if that's okay. How about Artie Sheloff's in his first NHL start in 3 months? I mean, we talked a lot of Lankinen and Demko on Friday, Jeff, so just fixate on Sheloff's here for a second. That was a terrific start, and that's something that his career needed and something the Vancouver Canucks needed as well.
Yeah, really happy for him. And looked the part of a National Hockey League last night. There are better opponents out there than Utah. They don't score a ton either, but that's who he was tabbed to play against. And, an early penalty could have kind of submarine the Canucks' effort in Utah, but he was tested on the power play there. And Utah's got a good power play, and the Canucks found out the hard way, obviously, in the third period of that fact. But no, if it's about building trust with your teammates and the coaching staff and wanting more opportunities, well, they got the back-to-back in Anaheim again on Thursday. I would think, based on his performance against Utah, that, yeah, he's going to get that chance where we had talked on Friday. Do they run Lankinen on both ends of a back-to-back at some point out of necessity? So I think it was important for him personally just to regain some of that confidence, to prove that, is he ready to be a full-time NHLer? Probably not. But that tweener that's continuing to develop and grow his game, he looked way more confident. And I think some of that comes from the fact that in the preceding weeks, he's been good in Abbotsford. He's delivered results there, and it felt like he was able to bring that to the NHL with him. So he didn't get the win. He's stuck on one victory on the season. But, boy, when we look at individual performances by guys in Canucks uniforms in Utah, it's a long list of guys that didn't hold up to the end of the bargain before you get to Artur Silovs.
And I think he's probably earned himself another start in this back-to-back in Southern California later in the week. Marvelous stuff. Speaking of, we will catch up with you then as well, Jeff, after the games against the Kings and Ducks. Thanks for this. Until then.
Yeah, let's see what this week brings.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
So, Harrison Price from the Historic Wall Center. This next segment brought to you by Ben Moss, a proudly Canadian-owned, operated company with a history dating back more than 100 years. They got 5 locations in BC: Abbotsford, Chilliwack, Victoria, Willowbrook, and Langley. Coquitlam Center, committed to customer satisfaction. They have a large selection of Canadian mined diamonds, lab-grown diamonds. Check out the mined diamonds with payment plans to suit your needs. And for more information, you can go to benmoss.com. Ben Moss, for the love of jewelry. Well, we were watching the Four Nations from the TD Garden in Boston last week and went, hey, that sounds like a familiar voice.
Everybody was saying that.
Don't know.
Yeah.
Rogers PA man Al Murdoch also does all the big NHL events, the Winter Classic, the Stadium Series, and there he was front and center for a Best on Best international tournament, and he joins us now from his Lower Mainland home. How you doing, Al?
I am great. Still trying to come down from. I actually don't want to come down from the of last week. It was so grateful. Let me just say right off the bat how grateful I am for these opportunities and good fortune to be part of these NHL events. And who knew before the Four Nations was going to start what it would end up being? And man, what a week it was.
Up until now, wars have not had PA announcers.
It happened. No.
Did you sort of feel like you were doing that? Like recommissioning, reimagining the War of 1812 with a PA announcer?
Well, it was interesting because as one of the very few Canadian members of our crew, I was hearing it all around me. And, and it was exciting. It was fun to be a part of. Now, when it got down to the game and once we got started, you kind of lose that and you've got a job to do. And then once we saw what happened, what a game. It could have gone either way in overtime. It went Canada's way. I'm happy about that being a Canadian. But I'll be honest with you, as an impartial PA announcer, a part of this international tournament, I have to be impartial. And I hope I made those goal calls as even as I possibly could. It was in Boston, so I had to pump up the United States ones just a little bit more because it was in Boston in the United States. But that Connor McDavid goal call in overtime, it was through the roof for sure.
Have you done Best on Best international hockey in the past, Al?
Yeah, World Juniors was here in Vancouver 2019, and that was memorable as well. Obviously, a lot more teams, a lot more names to to figure out. Best part about this one is I knew all of the players, so that was a bonus because the World Juniors you gotta figure out how to pronounce a whole bunch of names of players that may or may not be moving on to that next stage. Right?
Wait, so I gotta say Yvonne 3 times? Yvonne.
Yeah, well, it was great because back then we had Kirill Schlepitz of Russia. We had, of course, Capo Caco, which ended up being a household name now. But we had a bunch of names that you kind of had to go through and go, okay. I literally went to the Swedish coach as he walked by the PA perch up there at Rogers Arena, and I just recognized him and said, "Hey, do you have 30 seconds to help me out?" And he was fantastic. So thank you again for that.
What was it like, Al, being in those two cauldrons for Canada and the United States? Talk us through your
Montreal and Boston, both spectacular
absolutely.
Stadiums.
Well, I must say that I wasn't part of the Boston games, the Montreal games. The great Michel Lacroix, who I revere among PA announcers in all of sports, was there. And, he did such an amazing job. I respect him so much. And watching those games, I flew into Boston and got into the hotel. And as I was checking in, the game had already started between Canada and the U.S. And I was looking, if you know the hotel in Boston that I stayed at, you check in and you can kind of look up and they've got a restaurant up there with a bunch of monitors. So the guy was asking me for my credit card and I was going, hang on, I got to see the third fight. So, and of course I immediately rushed upstairs, threw my bag in, went down to the bar restaurant. And again, I was probably the only Canadian in that bar, sitting by myself, having dinner with all of this chants of USA. So that prelude to the final, I knew what I was getting into. And I was so excited about being part of that. And then when it finally came, the doors opened, the chants started, USA. And then the Canadian representation with all of the red in there as well was amazing because they were as loud as they could be. They were drowned out a little bit by USA, but it was just a great representation of all of the countries that participated. So when you got Sweden, you got Finland, you got the United States, you got Canada, and their respective nations and their fans cheering them on and wanting them, to win, win so bad. it was just a feeling that you just felt right here every game. It was wonderful.
Games of it, like you've done a lot of the fun stuff, as Matt outlined at the beginning there, the Winter Classics and all that sort of stuff, but they're not games of import. The 2 points are just 2 points on any given night. But I mean, you think back to 2011 and playoff games for the Canucks in general, pretty amped up. But this has to be at the top of the list in terms of like having to calm yourself down for announcements.
Yeah, I mean, and that was the thing, was you have to be impartial, but of course it was the final game, so we have rehearsals, we have meetings, we have chats about, and of course I asked them, what kind of delivery do you want? And when we got to the final game, all of the eyes, not only from diehard hockey fans, but the new fans, the new people that had never watched. So we wanted to give them the best show that we possibly could as a game presentation team. And I think we did. I really think we did. There was a lot of stuff, of course, that you never saw on TV that we did within the arena. But I'm just so grateful to be a part of that. It is the highlight of my PA career so far, for sure.
Tell us, because a lot of us were celebrating. There was a bit of euphoria after Connor McDavid scores, but your duties during the medal ceremonies and the trophy presentation. Take us through that, Al.
Well, after those amazing saves by Binnington, and you just like your mouth was dropping. Everybody in the in our crew, and the interesting thing is that I had the Swedish play-by-play group right beside me, and so I had them for all of the games in Boston, and they were going crazy, and everybody else was going crazy, and me, I had to make sure. Okay, David got the goal. Who got the assist? Was it Marner? Okay, was there a second assist? So I'm not jumping up for joy. I'm getting ready to make that goal call when we are able to do it, because we want to let everything sink in. We want to have the crowd, going crazy. So I was concentrating on that, and of course concentrating on all of my duties for post game. So once I announced the goal, crowd went crazy. Then there was a little bit of a pause. Then we had to go through the medal ceremony, which was wonderful, because then I got to announce every single, representative from Canada. Would have done the same if it was the United States, and would have given it the same amount of enthusiasm as if they would have won. And then we get to the trophy presentation and then the anthem. So, I really can't describe it in words. It was just a memorable experience for sure.
Gold medal, Sidney Crosby.
Wow.
Sounds pretty good, huh?
Wow.
Lastly from me, buddy.
Yeah.
I was hoping for a JT Miller point somewhere in Boston so we could hear it maybe one last time. JT Miller. It had become a thing. And the last time we talked to you, Al, we talked to you about this and how much fun the crowd at Rogers Arena was having announcing the JT Miller goals and points alongside you. Would you have given it the Rogers Arena JT Miller zest there in Boston? Because I guess he can't do it again, right, when he comes back for the Rangers.
Absolutely, 100%. I would have done that. And again, we had discussions about it, and it was like, absolutely, you've got to do it, because you would hope that it carries on. Wherever in New York now or wherever he ends up, you would hope that kind of would carry on. And he had a few opportunities. I wouldn't have done it on an assist maybe, but if he would have scored, I certainly would have leaned into that a little bit more.
You must be feeling like your voice is more full these days. The Canucks are only scoring 2 goals per game. They're not taxing you too much on the microphone.
Yeah, there.
No comment.
He does the penalties too.
Listen, I mean, again, my you guys, I've mentioned this to you guys before. My first job is to inform. My second job is to entertain. I've got to get in there. I've got to do it. And the more goals they score, obviously, the more fun I'm going to have as well, because I'm with the fans. But I'm always optimistic before every game. I have to be. So I'm looking forward to them. Coming off this road trip in that first week of March, getting back into that PA perch at Rogers Arena.
There you go.
Well, it was awesome having a familiar voice and a great guy behind the voice for the Four Nations. Al, you've always been amazing with us. Thank you for this, my friend. Welcome home.
Yes.
And look forward to hearing you at Rogers Arena.
I always appreciate your support, guys. Thanks so much.
Secure some price from the historic Wall Center, where you turn game night into a game weekend. Book your stay here at the Wall. Enjoy the exclusive Secure some price rate. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for us by name. Based on availability, some blackout dates apply. It dawned on me watching the match yesterday that whoever buys the Whitecaps gets to own the Timbers as well.
Very
5-0 and 4-1. Your last two results down at Providence Park in the Weird City. Vancouver winners in the wild card game and absolutely destroy Portland in the MLS opener for both sides. A star is born. 22-year-old midfielder Canadian Jaden Nelson with a goal, his first in MLS, and 3 assists in his Whitecaps debut. Only other Cap to have ever done that is the best player in club history, Alphonso Davies.
I believe it's the most for a player in a team debut in Major League Soccer history. A goal and 3. Most goal contributions.
Well, it's hard to do better than that. I mean, he leads MLS in assists.
It's, because of the red card early, 11th minute red card for Portland, a team analysis of this game is a little bit difficult, but, you want to do what happened there when you go
foot
up.
down, though.
Yeah. But secondarily, it did give you individual assessments. It's, again, I don't think it's a great team assessment match because of being up a man, but it gives you individual assessments. Is Pedro Vite going to push forward more? Is he going to try to shoot the ball like he did there? Fabulous goal for Pedro Vite.
Yes.
Nelson showing his speed down the flank.
Nelson on the ball is amazing to watch.
And he's not just Eric Hurtado, who
clunky touch,
like really good dribbling down the wing there on the right side, setting up Adekubi. I think he's faster than Fafa Pico if we're going to compare the guy acquired versus the guy lost. Great to see Adekubi run onto that ball as well. That means that Adekubi's feeling pretty healthy. And then, Ryan Gauld was a menace.
Ryan Gauld.
And it looked great. And Brian White, a little snake bitten. One goal called back offside. The thing that creates the red card is him with a little bit of a clunky touch himself that otherwise he would normally reel in and score on. So, that was there as you'd hope it would be. So, overall, some good individual windows that you really can't extrapolate, but you just want to make sure everybody's feeling good. And I'm sure they do feel good after that.
Well, speaking of feeling good, an 18-year-old from Surrey, a Whitecaps Academy product, Jivan Badwal, made his first MLS appearance as well. And the Caps are right back at it this week, everybody. If you want to see this kid Nelson with your own two eyes, Thursday versus Deportivo Saprissa, 7 p.m., This is the Costa Rican side, featuring former Whitecap Kendall Waston. The Caps trail in this CONCACAF Champions League tie 2-1, but they do have the road goal here. And then Sunday versus the defending MLS champion, LA Galaxy. That's a 2 p.m. kickoff, one of just 3 afternoon kickoffs this year at BC Place for MLS games, so take advantage of that. Axel Schuster spoke before the weekend. He has confirmed that the Caps have opted for the under-22 initiative here. Blake is going to tell you about this in a second, but mentioned they're looking to add 2 other players and will use the money that they would otherwise allocate to a third DP in this model. Pedro Vite and Ocampo are the U22 designates. Just explain this for those who are unfamiliar.
So you can either have the 3 DPs and 3 U22 initiative players on your roster. These are players that get salary exemptions, basically, to your salary cap.
Over and above. Yes.
Over and above. But if you go with 2 and 4, 2 DPs, 4 U22 initiatives, you get an additional coupon, if you will, a GAM coupon of $1 million that can pay down another player, maybe get them out of a DP slot, get them into a regular international spot. It's a good coupon to have going forward, and that doesn't preclude the Whitecaps from going to get their DP in the summer and then still having the GAM coupon in their back
Like,
pocket.
if you know you've got a DP who's going to work out, surely use the DP slot. But when you're of half minds, and let's face it, the Caps have brought some ballyhooed players in here who have fallen flat in the past or have been here for a minute and bounced like Stuart Armstrong. So you might as well use the coupon, as Blake puts it, and the U22
and you can also
initiative.
You can also have conversations with agents now and say, listen, will your guy come in the summer? And your free agent to be, remember, wrong soccer calendar for the European clubs. Will your guy come in the summer? Yep, we're in. He loves that place. He wants to try MLS. Boom. So,
like the Slovenian Timo Horvat, right? Like
it could be him. It could be somebody like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Great weekend for the Canadian men's national team as well. Jesse Marsh makes a visit to England, and next thing you know, 21-year-old Bournemouth striker Daniel Jebbison has switched his allegiance from England to Canada. He's a kid born in Oakville. He lived his first 11 years here in Canada. Marsh was at his MLS or his EPL match on Saturday. And then 23-year-old Union SG striker Promise David from the Belgian League has also switched his allegiance to Canada. He's born in Brampton, had been playing under the Nigerian banner, but a former TFC Academy member. So Canada getting a little deeper up front alongside Jonathan David and Kyle Larin.
No relation, by the way, Jonathan and Promise.
At striker. The BC Lions released their most outstanding rookie nominee from 2024, Ace Ely, who immediately signs with Ottawa, according to Dan Ralph of the Canadian Press. A little surprising here. He dressed for 17 games. He made 9 starts, 60 tackles, 6 on special teams. Was a thumper, but of course, BC signed a thumper back. Micah Awe, his 4th tour with the Lions. He's back after spending time with the Calgary Stampeders. Adam O'Clair, Adam Konar, 2 Canadian linebackers, also signed in free agency. Both have starting experience. Plus, they're getting Josh Woods back. Don't sleep on Josh Woods. He was tracking to be an excellent player before getting hurt early last year, missing the season. And, of course, Ben Hladek of Vernon is also in the fold. So a numbers crunch there for Ace Ely. Rugby sevens at BC Place over the weekend. 58,664 attended, and a lot on the weekend because it was a little sparse on Friday, but boy, it picked up. On the men's side of things, Argentina, boy, they're a beast in rugby sevens. They beat South Africa in the final. Spain plays for the bronze. Canada is not playing at the elite level this season. They played as part of an invitational and destroyed Trinidad and Tobago and Japan, a combined 189-36 over 4 matches, all victories. In the women's side, New Zealand beats Fiji, the first time those 2 countries have met, 2 great rugby-playing nations. In a women's final at the sevens, Australia for bronze, Canada for 7th place. Poll question results from Friday. Sir, yeah?
No, I said,
Sorry, poll question
yes,
results.
confirming you, yes.
Thank you for the confirmation.
Yes.
Who is the Canucks' #1 goaltender? Lankinen or Demko? The people said.
I think they're mad. I think they said Lankinen.
Indeed, percentage
67.
should have stopped at 60. Darren, oh come on! How is this a question? A healthy Demko has shown he is the go-to guy. Now, if you ask who plays more games, question mark. But both healthy, Demko is getting the start. VJ, I could see a 50-50 situation if Demko signs for similar numbers. Shane, if both healthy, game 1 of the playoffs, it's Demko's net. He's an exceptional goalie. Hopefully he finds a way to stay injury-free. And Mitch says, based on this year, it's Lankinen. Let's give it a year and see if Demko can stay healthy and get back on top of his level and go from there. But Lankinen has been an unbelievable addition for the Canucks in this season that could have gone off the rails. Well-earned
To repeat
contract.
our, I think, unanimous opinion on this topic last week, it was really about the debate about what the word healthy means. Playing isn't healthy for Thatcher Demko. Healthy and looking like, quote-unquote, Thatcher Demko, that's healthy. And who knows when that's going to be for Thatcher Demko. I was just looking at the goaltending stats, Matt. Kevin Lankinen is 19-9-7. That is a playoff pace. That's like you're going to finish the season. If you played 65 games, you're 20 games above 500. You're in the playoffs on the back of Kevin Lankinen. For Demko and Shilovs,
Not a playoff pace.
7, 11, and 4. Like way below the playoff line.
Yep. It's save percentage 907 to 891 now in Lankinen's favor over Demko.
Yeah.
It's a goals against average 252 to 287. Again, in Lankinen's favor. He's got the 4 shutouts to 1, albeit he's played twice as many games, but has more than 3 times the wins. Errors and omissions, I have 3. At one point, I said 18 one-way contracts for the Canucks. It's 19. We had a technical glitch right at the end of our interview with Chelsea Green, which is why we didn't say goodbye, but did reconnect with Chelsea later. Thank you for your time. And Blake talked about a half pence. It's a half penny.
Oh.
It's actually exactly what it says. It's 1/200th of a dollar or a pound.
What's their colloquial term for half a pound? Do they have that? Half quid?
I didn't look that up, actually.
You know, for tomorrow.
I think just 50 pence. 50 pence. Name? It's a 50 pence coin.
Yeah.
They call it a 50 pence. Anyways. Loved you going pound sterling, though. Thank you for spending some time connecting with us, everybody. You were brave enough to go foreign denominations. We appreciate you connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to
What's a quid?
YouTube. Well, it's a
dollar.
pound.
It's a half quid. Yeah, there you go.
We do appreciate you. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, including YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky Live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. And keep it local.